In this video, we'll be looking at this blobfish, and I have one question. Do you consider this blobfish to be living? Yes. Although it is not the most prettiest creature, we can still consider this living, right? Now, when you think of yourself, do you consider yourself living? Yes. Okay. Well, now let's think about this rock. Do you consider this rock living? No, right? We do not consider this rock living. Okay, now what about, do you think of your bed as living? No, your bed is also not living. Now what about a cell? A single cell. Do you consider a single cell living or not? That might be a bit tricky, but yes, we do. We consider a single cell living. Now, last question. What about the membrane of that cell? If we took a piece of that membrane of that cell, do we consider that piece of membrane as living or not? We consider that piece of membrane as non-living. So, my question is, why do we consider a single cell living, yet this rock is non-living? Okay, so how we define something as living is anything that carries out the 7 functions of life. If that specific thing you're considering carries out the 7 functions of life, then we can conclude that it's living. Okay, so here are the 7 functions of life. This is a kind of way to remember it, okay? Because sometimes you just can't think of them all. So it's hi, Mr. Grin. The I doesn't mean anything. It just makes it make more sense. Otherwise, you can't remember H, Mr. Grin, you know? So hi, Mr. Grin. You will notice, depending on your teacher, one of these might be replaced with another one. So it's not always exactly these 7. Like sometimes, for example, I've seen sometimes response is not response but movement. Some teachers prefer the word movement as opposed to response. So just know that depending on your teacher, depending what you're doing, they may not be exactly these 7. But for the IB, at least it is these 7. So let's talk about each of these individually so we know what they mean. Let's start with homeostasis. So a living organism needs to be able to do something called homeostasis to be considered living. Okay, so homeostasis. Homeo, if you look at the first part of the word, means the same. It means the same. And then stasis means state. So the same state. So homeostasis is a synonym for homeostasis would be balance. So your body needs to be able to maintain balance. And what I mean by this is we know that inside our body we have many things going on. We have a certain body temperature, a certain body salt level, a certain body glucose level, a certain body water volume, all of these things, right? And a living organism needs to be able to maintain that specific level. So your body can't randomly just increase its body temperature to 50 degrees. If that happens, you'll be dead. So it's very important that your body can maintain all these parameters. Okay, that's what a living thing can do. So I'll give you some examples. So here we have Usain Bolt, okay? Right now, he went for a photo shoot, okay? And he's just standing here. He's relaxed. Wait 1 second here, make this smaller. So he's relaxed. He's not running or anything. He's just dressed up, right? And we can say that his body temperature is normal, right? 37 degrees or 36 to 37 degrees. It kind of depends on the person, right? Now, let's look at this picture. Let's say here is a moment right after a race. What can you notice? We notice that he is sweating. So my question is, do you think his body temperature is the same in both pictures or not? Do you think it's higher in this picture compared to this one? So you should say that they are the same, okay? And that's exactly the purpose of homeostasis. Despite the fact that he went running and everything and worked really hard, his body temperature is still 36 to 37 degrees Celsius. This is because his body can do homeostasis, and that means his body can get rid of all the heat that he produced while running, because while running, your body heats up, right? But your body can effectively get rid of that heat before your blood temperature or your body temperature increases. And that's what sweat does. When you sweat, you get rid of heat. So in reality, in both of these circumstances, he has the same body temperature, which is why when you take your body temperature for like coronavirus or something, it's not reasonable to say that, oh, I was just in a warm car and my body temperature will be higher. That's not true, because your body has homeostasis and it can maintain a good body temperature. It can maintain the normal body temperature. So the only case where homeostasis is broken is when you have a fever, right? And your body temperature increases because of the infection, right? In that case, homeostasis was broken a little bit and it takes a bit of time to get it back to normal. Okay, so this is basically what homeostasis means. Another quick example would be drinking water. Have you ever noticed when you drink a lot of water before you sleep, that night you have to wake up to go and pee? That's because your body is also trying to maintain its water balance. If you drank too much water and your body has too much water inside, it's going to want to get rid of some to maintain the normal level. And that's why you go to the bathroom. Okay, so there's many other examples. These are just two easy ones to explain. Okay, so when we talk about these, consider a human being. So consider for now just a human being, because we know living things are not necessarily like human beings, like made up of many cells. They can also be made up of a single cell. That's called a unicellular organism. And we'll talk about one later here. But for now, when we talk about these factors, just consider a multicellular organism, such as a human. And then later we'll see how these apply to a single cell organism. Okay, because like I said, any living thing can do all of these. So in theory, even this single-celled organism should be able to do all 7 of these. But we'll look at it later. Okay, let's look at metabolism, the next one. Metabolism is another tricky word. It means the making and the breaking of specific things, okay? So your body, by that logic, should be able to make substances and break substances down. That's what metabolism means. So for example, when you have a pizza or ice cream or whatever your favorite food is, your body will break that down, right? It will make it into smaller and smaller pieces until it's a single protein or a single glucose molecule. And then it will use those protein and those glucose molecules to make other things like muscles or fat or whatever, any other thing. So metabolism is the breakdown and making of things. Okay, but you might be wondering, so why do we need to break this down? Why can't we just directly give this to our cells? First of all, because a pizza is humongous, and this will not fit in a single cell. Therefore, you need to break it down. And secondly, our bodies don't work in terms of food currency. So when we look at a vending machine, right? It's annoying because this vending machine wants you to put in a coin, not a bill, like a paper bill or a QR code. It doesn't want any of that. It wants a coin. So our body works the same way. Our body doesn't accept a pizza the way it is. It wants to convert this pizza into a currency that your body can use. And for example, that is ATP, right? ATP is the currency of our body. So metabolism will ensure that your body breaks down this pizza into a currency it can use, just the same way that this vending machine requires a coin rather than a paper bill, okay? So metabolism is just all about breaking and making of substances, and all living things can break down and make things in their body. Okay, next one, response. This is a fairly straightforward one. When you think about response, what do you think of? When I think about response, I think of somebody at night walking around and it's feeling a bit scary, right? So what will happen at night when you're pretty scared and someone suddenly comes running at you? You will most likely, so someone comes running, it looks like they're going to attack you. You will most likely either fight them or run away. That is called response. Depending on the environmental circumstances, you will behave differently. If there's danger, you will fight. Or run away, depending what kind of person you are. So that would be an example of humans. And another one is plants. So have you ever noticed, I don't know if you like plants or not. If you don't, then this might not be such a nice example, but think about plants. When you put a plant inside your room and you only have one window, you'll notice that plant will grow towards your window because it is trying to respond to the environmental circumstances. It's going to respond to be able to grow to the light, because by growing towards the light, it gets the most light possible, and therefore it can grow the best. Suddenly, if you move that same plant outside where the sun is now in the sky, it will grow upwards towards the sun. So this is another example of response, adapting to the environment to be able to survive the best. Okay, next one, growth. Growth. I didn't have an image for this one because I think this one's pretty straightforward. Why are you as tall as you are now? And why did you not stay the size of a baby? Because you grew. You increased in size. And your increase in size is partly due to metabolism, because you were able to break down food and make more of yourself, make more bone, make more muscle, make more hair, all that kind of stuff. So growth is partly related to metabolism. And all living things can grow. Plants, animals, cells, anything. Okay, next one is reproduction. Also a straightforward one. Why are you on Earth? Did you just appear out of nowhere? No, your parents made you. Okay, so you came about by reproduction. Same with all other living things. They all come about from some origin. They don't just appear out of nowhere. Something had to make them. A cell has to divide to make another cell. That's also reproduction. So you can come about, a living thing can come about or do reproduction, either asexual or sexual reproduction. Either way, it's fine. Because, for example, a rock cannot do either of these things we talked about. They cannot maintain its temperature. If you touch a rock on a really warm day, you'll burn your fingers off. A rock, you cannot give a rock a pizza. It will not break it down. You cannot throw a rock at a rock because the rock will not try and dodge it, okay? A rock cannot get bigger. If anything, it can only get smaller if it gets eroded by acid rain or something. And it cannot suddenly make a baby, right? Now let's look at the next one. Excretion. Excretion. We all are familiar with this. We all need to get rid of things. We all need to go to the bathroom. Why? Excretion is getting rid of things that your body does not need. Okay? It's like the waste materials. Because everything you eat is not healthy. Sometimes you eat something that is that your body doesn't like something toxic, and then you get rid of it, because if you keep it in your body and it keeps building up, it might damage yourself. So therefore, you get rid of it, okay? You get rid of what you don't need. Cells also do that, and we'll talk about that later. Can this rock take a poo? No way, right? Okay, how about nutrition? Nutrition is very similar to metabolism. It's like basically, can all living things can eat, okay? That's what nutrition means. So you can eat whatever you would like to eat. Maybe they don't all taste so good, but you can eat whatever you'd like to eat. This rock cannot eat, okay? It cannot obtain sunlight or anything to grow. It has no form of nutrition. Okay, I hope all of these functions of life made sense. And just think about yourself and can you do all of these? And then it makes sense. And think about something like a rock that is non-living, and definitely, yeah, they can't do it, right? Okay, but now that we talked about a human, we are multicellular. We are made up of many cells. So of course we can do all of these things quite easily. It's logical. Just think about yourself. But since a cell is considered the smallest unit of life according to the cell theory, in theory, by that logic, it should be able to do all the functions of life then, because it is technically the smallest unit of life, right? So we're going to take a look now at a single-celled organism, a unicellular organism called Paramecium that can also carry out all of these functions of life. So all unicellular organisms, so all single cells can carry out all the functions of life. We're just using this one as an example, okay? So this is an organism by itself. It doesn't need more than one cell. It's only made up of one cell, yet it's a full organism. So what I'm gonna do here is give you a challenge. Here is all the words. I'm gonna highlight this in bold because I didn't do it yet. So here is all the structures. So I labeled them here. You have to match them to the structure, and in that way, see if they carry out all the functions of life. So let's start off with cilia. Okay, so cilia is this hair-like substance, hair-like material on the cell membrane, okay? It is responsible for movement, okay? So for example, if this cell sees an enemy, it's gonna use its cilia to swim away. So it's called response. Or if it sees food, it's gonna swim towards the food, response. How about, let's look at this one. What do you think this is? This, well, actually, let's go to this one later. This right here is the mouth. So we call this the oral groove. Okay, this is nutrition. This is this other function of life. It can eat through here. When the food comes along, it can swallow it. Then that food goes into something called a food vacuole. Okay, that's this. So it goes in here and then it forms a vacuole like this afterwards. This is metabolism. This is where the cell is, it's like the stomach of the cell. It's going to break the food down here. And once it's broken down, it can use it for energy and it can go synthesize other things, because metabolism is not just breakdown, but also synthesis of things. Okay, now after you made what you wanted to make and there's leftovers, where do those leftovers go? They get excreted, right? That's called the anal pore here. Now, one more thing here, two more things actually. We have this contractile vacuole. We have not talked about homeostasis yet. And remember, we said homeostasis is keeping balance. So scientists have isolated this cell and they wanted to see if this cell can do homeostasis, right? So what they did was they added a lot of salt inside inside the environment of the cell, so around the cell. And we know this is bad because salt is going to cause water to be, because salt attracts water, right? But we know this cell does not want to lose its water. So what's going to happen is, even though it's super salty outside, this cell is going to contract this circle, make it smaller so that it can't lose its water. That way it maintains its water even though the environment is super salty and wants to pull out all the water from it. Okay, that's an example of homeostasis. So despite what's happening around the cell, it is maintaining optimal conditions by conserving its water. Because you can imagine, if this circle gets bigger, the cell will lose all its water. Okay. Now last one, nucleus. The nucleus is responsible. It has your DNA, right? Your code, the code of how you work. So it's responsible for deciding when you reproduce and when you grow. Okay. That's why we only grow when we reach puberty. It's all because the DNA is only being expressed later when you're older for growth. Okay, so I hope this made sense for a single cell organism. So you need to know both how it works for a human, like a multicellular organism, and how it can also work for the smallest living thing, which is a cell. Okay.